Good morning, folks, and welcome back to our second breakout session. We're going to get started, and just as a quick introduction to our next speaker, we have David Carter, who is a support engineer at Microsoft. And David describes himself as an average guy, but I describe him as an average guy with a not-so-average story. So we're really excited to hear from him. We hope that you feel inspired and you see yourself in him or see your students in him. So please join me in welcoming David Carter.
Excellent. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is a complete honor to have you here. Listening to a regular Joe like me. I'm nobody special. As you've heard, I work for Microsoft. I'm an Azure Support Engineer. I support the Azure Cloud in our authentication division. So when you can't sign in, I'm one of the people that they call. All right. This is a story of my career switch from the automotive industry into the world of IT. Here you will learn how a person can go from working at your local Honda dealership to working for Microsoft. I happen to do that in just over a year, but I know that that is definitely not the standard. It took a lot of hard work, a little bit of bravery, and a whole lot of luck. So thank you for listening as I take you through my journey to the cloud. So what inspired me to make this journey, all right? When I started this, I saw the IT industry as a world of opportunity. You know, I saw a lot of innovation, a lot of growth, and I kind of wanted to be a part of that. But one of the main factors, here, opportunity and growth, I got to remember to change slides. One of the main factors is IT professionals, you know, staff, friends, even my own very own customers that I've met throughout the way. They inspired me because they were willing to teach, give advice. They're also willing to, you know, kind of show what it was like to actually be in the industry, and that was really refreshing. And that was one of the biggest motivators, and still is, as I go through my journey. So when I started this, I had three main goals, okay? One was to double my income. I'm pretty sure everyone in here has that goal, right? Make more money, have less debt. My second goal was to provide for my family. That really doesn't require any explanation. I do have my wife here, no kids. We do have a dog, as you can see there. And to spend more time enjoying life. You know, these pictures here, this one we're in front of a carousel. This one here, the backdrop is several mountains. This is our trip that we took to Seattle for Microsoft training. And I just wanted to show some of the enjoyments that we've had since I've entered the IT industry. So this has definitely made a big impact on our lives. Next, I'll be talking about the real-world steps that I took. Over the last 2 years, I've kind of, you know, TestOut asked me to speak here, and so I kind of went back and said, hey, what were the most important steps that I actually took when I was on this journey? One was realizing I was in the wrong career. And I did that by talking to my sales customers. I was in a pretty unique position to ask certain questions like, where do you work? You know, how long have you been at your job? And how much money do you make there, of course, right? I wanted to know so that I can get a little bit more insight into what was really going on, okay? Sites like PayScale and Dice, after getting all that information from my customers, I was able to, especially PayScale, go on there and research about different careers of IT, different flavors, what I actually wanted to go to. And that kind of led me back to TestOut. So that'll be my next slide. The next thing I realized was I had to get certified if I wanted any chance of achieving the goal that I have, okay? My former experience with TestOut was at a community college called Central Piedmont Community College in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had such a blast taking the TestOut not PC Pro, the Security Pro. And the staff that was there, the way it was organized, it just had a lasting effect on me. And throughout that, I came back to the program. So when I started this journey, I started off with the PC Pro, of course. After that, I earned my CompTIA A+. Also ended up achieving the Network Pro, also Server Pro as well. And after actually, getting all those certifications, really then I was kind of accepted into the IT industry. Okay, people know I was serious now. The next real world step that I took was from advice from people like you. Find a recruiter. Recruiters, I found out, and I'd recommend if you're, of course, college level, I definitely recommend partnering with recruiters. It turns out they have the best advice they could possibly give you, well, me anyway, in such a short amount of time. They've got all the insider knowledge of what companies are looking for, how to get hired, and the best part is they work for your students for free. You don't have to pay for it or anything like that. So where, in my opinion, is the best place to find a recruiter is LinkedIn. Now, I had a LinkedIn profile when I started this, okay? But it was all sales. I had sales certifications on there. I had, of course, I had followed any of my customers that were on LinkedIn as well. But I typed in recruiter one day on LinkedIn, and literally it was like my world opened up. And that's kind of where I got your recruiters from, right? So started interacting with a bunch of recruiters, started telling me, what you need to do, like things on your resume, pretty much almost exactly what your career counselors would do at your local college, right? The next real world step I took was how to interview. This is something I really sucked at. I bombed the first couple of interviews really, really bad. And I think one of the most important steps that I took was actually kind of learning how to interview in the IT world. YouTube I used a lot. It's an excellent source. Some of my actual searches was just IT interviews, interview questions, or how to interview for an IT job, right? And these searches, they brought up industry professionals inside and outside of the IT world. So it gave me a pretty good perspective on what to expect and what was expected from me when I went into an interview, okay? Lastly, creating my own lab. And this is something I really emphasize. It was probably the best experience I was able to have along this journey. When you get that first blue screen of death and nobody's around, it kind of sucks because you don't know what you did wrong, but you eventually fix it. Also, another thing I learned is computers don't like heat. Running too many VMs on a non-server machine will overheat it very quickly and it will shut off. So that was pretty good. So what challenges did I face? And I think you'll relate to this as well. Experience. Starting out in IT is incredibly hard. And it's even harder when you're not actually going through a curriculum program or you don't have a particular degree that you want to certify in, right? My biggest hurdle was employers, they just want someone who's had experience with the technology. This is why it's so important that you encourage your students to do it themselves at home, right? It gave me the challenge of doing things over and over and over again. So when I got it wrong, I had to fix it all by myself, right? There was a big difference in the way that I interviewed before and after I built that lab. I was able to answer different questions. I was able to go more in depth with the situation, and kind of ace the interview. The next challenge I had was pretty much interviewing. This, of course, as I said, was another skill that I had to learn. One question that your students should definitely be prepared for: tell me about yourself. Simple question, but you could absolutely get it wrong. It's, as I found out quickly, that it is not a question for you to tell about yourself. It's more about your experiences. What have you done in the IT so far? How far has it gotten you? What do you have on paper? What do you have to show, right? Another challenge that was presented to me was scenario-based questions. Question like these. User came to the help desk complaining that they couldn't connect. How would you handle this? Or a user is complaining that they can't sign in. How would you approach this? Things like that, right? So here's this question from a Microsoft perspective. My entire environment is down. Everything is at a standstill. I have about 30,000 users that can't work because they can't sign in. I've been searching for the issue for hours, but we just can't find the cause. I've done all the troubleshooting that I know how to do, and we need Microsoft to help. That is pretty much my day in the life and walk in Microsoft. This particular question here stems from one of the technologies that I cover, which is Active Directory Federation Services. And it basically controls everything that goes through it as far as sign-in. If you can't sign into your applications, nothing's going to happen, right? Another types of questions that's definitely going to be on your interviews, of course, as the gentleman mentioned in the prior event here, some simple questions like IP config, or how does ping work, what is Active Directory, things like that, right? Those were the biggest challenges for me because it's not that I didn't know about them, but I wasn't prepared for them, right? So Microsoft, what is it like working here, okay? If you could drink water through a fire hose, you'd find out a little bit of what it's like to work for Microsoft. And that's literally just because of the breadth of information that's coming at you. It's constantly changing. Everything's constantly being updated. I remember starting to work for Microsoft and pulling up my email one day, and every Microsoft employee is a part of a beta program. So that send email button may switch a couple times and you not even know it, and that might happen throughout the day actually. So it's kind of cool. I will say this. I really liken Microsoft, working at Microsoft, to about 5 years experience in 1 year. And that's not because of something I made up, but that's just right in the door. That's what my manager told me. It's going to be like 5 years in 1 year. And that should be probably a great testament to the TestOut program, because I was able to, with the knowledge that they taught me, I was able to kind of fit right in really quickly, as quickly as possible anyway, because you kind of just had to, right? So what I would like to say here, before I get into this, is thank you to the faculty professionals. You all are excellent. You're in the battlefield every single day, teaching students, and you never really know where they're at. So thank you for kind of instilling the values in me, the knowledge, things like that. And I truly do appreciate it. What is Microsoft searching for as professionals? Okay, we're looking for self-motivated individuals. This is one of the biggest factors of me getting hired. Having a self-led, ongoing learning mentality with a growth mindset. Growth mindset means that you're forever learning and always moving towards the better future. And that in itself requires self-motivation. Right? So also looking for great communication skills. And this doesn't necessarily mean you speak perfect English. A worldwide company, right? But this means more about how you're able to get your point across, those soft skills, right? Being able to capture a customer's attention and their, and their respect, as well as their confidence, so that even when you don't necessarily know the answer, they're confident that they called the right folks and you'll find an answer for them, right? Resourceful here means being able to find a validated solution, right? So when you're working on Sony's platform and they got billions of dollars coming through and they can't sign in, you have to find a verifiable solution before you put that in place in order to fix the issue. And there's ways for this. There's documentation, which I think that's one of the most valuable things that you can have. There's industry blogs from professionals, and also sometimes videos that have already been, walked through the steps through industry professionals from Microsoft as well as other folks. And lastly, technicals. Now, I put the technical last for a reason. Microsoft is seeking the best industry professionals that we could possibly get. However, we're not just looking for people that's highly skilled in technology. The technical aspect of the job is something that can be learned over time. However, we put slightly more emphasis on the prior three because we know we can teach the knowledge over the long term, right? So again, to my students and educators, I am extremely lucky and grateful to be in the position that I am. I realize I am not the norm, and when I started this journey, I did not imagine the amount of success that I would have. Here are my top 5 things for the educators and students. Top 5 for the students: certified. You can't imagine after each certification the amount of confidence that you get, especially with a program like TestOut. It gave me that assurance that I will be able to do what I set out to do in the beginning, right? Another thing for the students is just to encourage them to set goals and stick to them. I didn't meet every goal that I set out to meet, sometimes because, life hits you in a way that that's unexpected. But the ones that I did meet, I was able to see a finish line, right? So you can never know where that line is unless you draw it. Also, I believe that they should supplement their education. Not only, get their education from schools, but I think you should be exposed to, different publication magazines with Teams ID and CISO Mag. Teams ID has a really interesting publication that they do every year. They set out to rank the number one password that hackers use to actually infiltrate your account. Surprisingly enough, in 2018, that was 123456. Number 2 was password. That's expected. Easy one, right? Number 3, we get a little bit more secure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But those little tidbits is definitely, what our students should know, because we encounter those things, out in the field every single day. Start applying now. Students have nothing to lose and everything to gain from learning how to interview, because by the time they finish, they'll know the questions that they're going to ask. They'll know what to expect, and they'll know how to, if they want to get a job, how to study in on that concentration and not be so broad, right? If they happen to land a job while they're in college, great. They're working an IT job, they're getting experience. So when they come out, they'll have an easier path to take. Further, LinkedIn. It may seem small, but had I never had a LinkedIn and tailored it towards IT and been aware of it, I would have never gotten that call from Microsoft. It was actually that LinkedIn profile that they were able to contact me through LinkedIn, and we started exchanging information. But had I never done that, it would have never been possible for me to do this and have such success. And to my educators, I say keep planting the seeds. This is something close to me because I had a lot of great teachers. You never know where your students are. When I met TestOut, I was just trying to change my major. I was trying to switch over from engineering and went back to the place where I earned my associate's degree. The semester after I took TestOut, I dropped out. I stopped. And because of the program that I went through, it had a lasting impression on me. And I just say keep planting those seeds, never stop, because you never know what's going to happen later on down the line. Introduce your students to different education platforms. I can promise you, TestOut is one of the best out there. However, I've taken several. It will help in the long run, simply because as you got in the field, and I'm a testament to that, everyone doesn't learn the same, right? They may learn a little bit more over here than versus over here. Me particularly, I'm a weird learner. I like looking at videos and speeding them up as fast as I can and listening to them about 2 or 3 times in a row. That's just how I learn. I process things a lot differently when they're faster. I tend to fall asleep when things are running too slow, right? Another thing that I would encourage is on-demand classes. You'll have more time to actually, do a little bit more tinkering in class, right? But this would also, from my perspective, allow your students to absorb you more of the time and come back to things they missed. Some of my experience in college was, I would sit there and try and take notes, but I would miss a lot of the information. Then later on, I had nothing to really come back to because, well, sometimes the notes were a little bit incomplete, and I didn't have that anchor to kind of go back to and listen to a quick video. Documentation. I'm of the opinion that documentation should definitely be introduced right beside textbooks and tutorials. Microsoft, as you probably already know, has some of the best documentation out there and some of the worst. But it really would give them an insight on where they're trying to go. They're trying to go Cisco, allow them to go on the Cisco documentation and, kind of tailor it towards that part. If they want to do Microsoft, go on TechNet and be able to consume that information as they go, Thirdly, emphasize home labs. Whether it be something, they build in their own home or builds on the school premises. We have our own dev environments at Microsoft in the Azure cloud. That could be something you all take advantage of as well. Being able to, set it up, tear it down, set it up, tear it down. I have a dev environment myself, and I constantly have to tear that down probably 3 or 4 times a week. It's a full-fledged environment, Active Directory, Federation services, everything. Everything is in the Azure cloud. So thank you for listening to my story. I'm really proud to tell it, and I hope you absolutely got something out of it. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you can. And thank you for having me. Any questions and answers?
We're going to have some time for some Q&A.
So from the time you first knew I needed a life change, what was the duration from that moment of I need a life change to when you were hired at Microsoft? So that's one part of the question. And the second part of the question is, so I'm confused about your education. Was it driven at a community college where courses were structured for you for a degree plan, or was all this through some other format? So I was curious to know what the format was for that.
Okay, so I would say it was about 3 months. Wow. As far as saying hey, I need a new career. Yeah, I would say it's about 3 months. And something happened during that time and made me realize that I had a better future somewhere else. So I'll just leave it at that. It took about 3 months to actually get a hold of some research, start asking people, asking friends, teachers, things like that, trying to go back to where I started, right? And as far as the educational part, so I guess I'll give the whole story there. So I started out in the automotive industry. I got a degree from the NASCAR Technical Institute in Mooresville, North Carolina. After that, I earned my associates at Central Piedmont Community College, but that was for engineering. And then I went on to UNC Charlotte to try and earn an engineering degree. I found out it wasn't necessarily for me at the time. I think now I'm more into it than ever. But at the time, I went, when I decided to stop, I didn't want to necessarily stop my education. So I went back to Central Piedmont, and that's when I started the information technology. Here recently, I didn't go to school at all, actually. I looked up the TestOut program. They had a continuing ed part on there, and I just started in my bedroom. And 6 months later, I had a lab built. I was running about 3 or 4 Windows Server VMs, which, as I told you, could overheat a less powerful computer really quickly. So that's my story. Yeah. Thank you.
You spoke about during interviews having those experiences where employers would ask you about your experience, what your experience in the field or whatnot. How do you how would you suggest we help students convey that experience that's not paid in a job, in the field, whatnot, that's still valuable?
Home labs. So when I say it was a real difference in the way I was interviewing from the time before I built my lab and the time afterwards, one of the first things that got the interviewer that I interviewed with Microsoft interested was the tell me about yourself question. And I mentioned, I have a lab. I have servers at home. I also have Cisco networking equipment as well. Now that I learned prior and just kind of at the community college and just kind of picked it back up. But it was really they wanted to see that although I did not have any work experience, but I had a lot of other experience in kind of a dev environment, and just telling them about, the blue screens, or just telling them, I was able to learn how to look up documentation, to follow through certain things, to learn how to set it up. And being able to convey that experience to them probably means more than being, having a 4-year degree and having certifications and not really have taken part of that experience at home or on a job, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just to fill on that, I was in an interview, not an interview, I was at a meeting. I work for Rackspace,
Okay.
competitor.
Yeah.
And it's funny that I was talking to a gentleman in our security area, and he said the same thing. He got hired on, and the reason why he hired on, he was new, he just started, and it was because of his home lab.
Yeah.
Right? The guy had no experience whatsoever. He had just got into the field, and he was hired because of his home lab. He was so he was so excited about his home lab, and he was so, that he built it himself and he could fix it, that the people who hired him was like, well, we got to hire this guy just by his home lab. So I agree.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy that you said that to some people, but I've already met 2 people now that have said that same thing. So it must be something that is trending, I guess. Build a home lab. I'm going to start spewing that out now.
I would say this, if you're able to build a home lab and stay committed to it. As hard as it is. The reason why employers are looking for that is more on the lines of longevity. Are you going to be interested in this 5, 10 years from now? You know, if
One of the things that I tell my students is with TestOut, every one of the labs is a home lab.
yeah,
Because I'll have students go, well, I don't know where the log files are. Really? You have a lab. Go find them.
yeah,
Google it and find it. Because that's what employers are looking for.
they are.
And every one of the labs have it. And they were like, really?
yeah.
Yeah, they do.
And I would say this as well. There are a ton of resources available for you to download. Get 60-day trials, 30-day trials, stuff like that. Definitely encourage them to do that because it's one of those things that really go unnoticed. It doesn't get pushed a whole lot. And when you're in school, you got 4 classes going. You don't think it necessarily matters in the long run, but it really does. Yeah.
One of the comments that actually deals along with this, with the home lab, is that we're in IT, and IT constantly changes.
Yes.
Always changes, and one of the feelings that all of us, if you're in IT, are extremely familiar with is, go do this. Well, I don't know anything about that. You're the IT specialist, go do it. How do I? And one of the strengths of having your own home lab is, well, how did you learn to do that? Well, I knew that you're supposed to be able, I learned, I did it. Oh, you're self-motivated. Oh, you know how to look up things on the internet and figure out problems. Because I can guarantee you, if you build a home lab, it didn't go together in 10 minutes.
Ooh.
Right?
My wife can testify to that because there was a lot of banging on the chairs. Yeah, I remember. I remember turning the AC, down and freezing her because, when you run that stuff is that hot in the room, it could heat up pretty much the whole house. You don't even need to run anything. So.
So I have a question. You had mentioned that you suggest students get in contact with the recruiter. What does that look like for an inexperienced student? Because I imagine they'd go out and be like, hey, I need a job. So what advice would you give to a student who wants to reach out to a recruiter?
Well, most modern recruiters, I would say, because I was pretty in depth in trying to get a recruiter. When I started out, some of them wouldn't even speak to me because I didn't have experience, right? And some of them were like me, new, wanted to take a couple more risks, and I got hooked up with them. One of the things I would say is LinkedIn. It's easier to do a chat than face-to-face, right? Also, if they absolutely want to speak to a recruiter, must have their resume together because, of course, they're paid professionals as well. So, they definitely don't want you to waste their time, right? But just know that on the other side of the table, you're talking to a person that's working for you. I could have took it the hard way and divvied out 100, 200 resumes, applied for several jobs. But the good thing about a recruiter is they do all that stuff for you. A lot of the big companies, they go to them and say, hey, we need 30 or 40 spots to be filled.
So I want to understand, you went online at LinkedIn and you found your own recruiter.
Yeah.
Right, that's what you're saying, right? You just went LinkedIn and you put yourself out there,
right,
and a recruiter called you and they found you this Microsoft job?
That was later on. So yeah, a recruiter called me from Microsoft. They actually employ a lot of recruiters for looking for individual talent and stuff like that.
It's fantastic.
Well, if yeah, if you go on LinkedIn and in the search section and just type in recruiter, it's going to give you thousands of them. Yeah.
So you work for Rackspace, so nobody's trying to recruit you. But yeah, because I can tell you the recruiters are out there. They're looking for people all over the place. So I'm from San Antonio, where Rackspace is, and they're, for every tech job in San Antonio right now, I saw some statistic that they have 10 positions for every one person who's qualified for the position.
Mm-hmm.
And so people just aren't qualified, so they can't find people.
Well, I think there's a crowd where, they've gotten past school, life didn't really go their way, and they're just kind of out there, right? I don't necessarily think that there isn't any qualified professionals, but I think it stems more from people are expecting that knowledge to already be there instead of actually maybe taking the time to say, okay, you're here, almost there, but you're not quite where I need you to be. What would it take for us to kind of train you up? Because that's exactly what Microsoft did. I had a lot of training from TestOut, and it was a wonderful program. But I will say, nothing in the world could prepare me for what the next 12 months was going to be like. But when I started at Microsoft, they took about 4 months to train me on all the various programs. And that was pretty hard because it was one of those things that was 8 hours a day, and the information was fast. And at the end of that program, me and my teammates, he said, wow, suddenly I know something that anywhere else I wouldn't have learned 3 to 5 years, but 3 to 5 years later, and all of a sudden I knew it in 4 months, So we're looking to change that mindset of the industry, because we have people that, aren't necessarily tech professionals, but they're very good at the soft skills. And like I said, that's something that can definitely be learned over time. So it's a work in progress, and I think Microsoft is definitely one of the companies experimenting with the different aspects of it, but definitely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess just one more question, if no one else has any other questions. So David, what advice would you give to you at the beginning of this journey, just as a summary?
Go for it. No fear. Don't look back. Be humble, always. So be humble is probably the best advice I can give you. And build it. With anything, if you have a dream, it's true what they say, if you build it, it will come, right? So, yeah, and that's just the best part about it. Just go forward, build it, and stay humble. Thank you.